Breaking right now. The clock is ticking and the world is watching. Trump has issued a 48-hour ultimatum to Iran. Open the Strait of Hormuz, or the United States will obliterate your power infrastructure, starting with the largest facilities first. Iran has just ignored the deadline. Silence from Tehran. No concession, no negotiation, just defiance. Blackouts loom, markets tremble. And the question on everyone's mind is simple but terrifying. What happens when the clock hits zero? If you are watching this right now, your heart is probably racing. You have seen the headlines, you have heard the warnings, you have felt the tension building with every passing hour. This is not a drill. This is not speculation. This is a developing crisis that could change the price of everything you buy, the stability of every market you invest in, and the security of every nation that depends on affordable energy. Welcome to Power Clash Report. We are interrupting our scheduled coverage because a development has just emerged that demands your immediate attention. We are moving beyond the viral headlines and the panic-inducing narratives to examine what actually happened, what a 48-hour ultimatum really means in diplomatic and military terms, what obliterate power plants could mean for Iran's civilian population and the global economy, and what this escalation could mean for you, for your family, and for the world. Stay with me. Do not look away, because what you learn in the next few minutes could help you understand and prepare for a scenario where energy infrastructure becomes a weapon, where deadlines trigger consequences, and where the line between deterrence and destruction has never been thinner. Let us begin with the facts, because in a moment of fear, facts are your anchor. On March 26, 2026, multiple diplomatic and defense sources reported that the United States, through official channels, issued a formal ultimatum to the Islamic Republic of Iran. Cease all activities restricting navigation through the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours, or face severe and irreversible consequences targeting Iran's critical energy infrastructure, specifically its electrical power generation and distribution facilities. The statement, attributed to senior White House officials, reportedly named specific facilities as potential initial targets, including the largest thermal power plants in Iran's national grid. Iranian state media has acknowledged receipt of the communication, but has not issued a formal public response. Sources close to Tehran's leadership describe the ultimatum as unacceptable interference and vow that Iran will not bow to threats. As of this recording, there has been no confirmation that military assets have been repositioned for imminent strikes, nor has there been any official declaration of hostilities from either government. This distinction is critical. In the fog of crisis, rhetoric can escalate faster than reality. Acting on unverified assumptions can trigger real-world consequences that cannot be undone. Now let us examine the strategic dimension, because this is where the stakes become real. Targeting electrical power infrastructure is not a new concept in warfare. However, deliberately striking civilian power plants crosses a significant threshold under international humanitarian law, which requires distinction between military objectives and civilian objects. Electrical grids serve hospitals, water treatment facilities, communication networks, and homes. Disabling them can cause cascading humanitarian harm, loss of medical care, contamination of water supplies, breakdown of emergency services, and exposure of vulnerable populations to extreme weather. If the United States were to follow through on this threat, it would represent a profound escalation in targeting methodology, one that could invite widespread condemnation, even from traditional allies. But strategy is not just about legality, it is about leverage. The logic behind threatening power plants is clear. Degrade Iran's ability to function as a state, pressure its leadership by creating domestic unrest, and signal to other adversaries that the United States is willing to impose severe costs for defiance. However, this logic carries profound risks. First, it can unify rather than fracture the targeted regime. Civilian suffering often rallies populations around their leadership, not against it. Second, it can trigger unpredictable retaliation. Iran possesses asymmetric capabilities: missile strikes against regional energy facilities, cyber operations against critical infrastructure, proxy attacks on allied interests, or threats to the Strait of Hormuz itself. Third, it can blur the lines between war and peace, creating a precedent for targeting civilian infrastructure that could be exploited by other actors in future conflicts. Now let us address the claim that Trump is panicking. This phrase suggests a leader reacting impulsively to an unexpected challenge. However, crisis decision-making at the highest levels is rarely impulsive. It involves intelligence assessments, military options, diplomatic considerations, and political calculations. If an ultimatum has been issued, it is likely the product of deliberate planning, not panic. The appearance of panic can be a strategic narrative as much as a reflection of reality. Understanding the difference is essential to avoiding misinterpretation. Let us talk about the economic stakes because this is where the impact becomes personal, immediately. Iran's electrical grid powers not just homes and businesses, but also oil and gas infrastructure, petrochemical plants, and desalination facilities. Disabling power generation could disrupt Iran's ability to produce and export energy, tightening global supplies and pushing prices higher. Analysts project that a significant disruption to Iranian energy output could add $10 to $20 per barrel to global oil prices within days. For consumers, this means higher gasoline prices, increased heating and electricity costs, and broader inflationary pressure. For businesses, it means higher operational expenses, squeezed margins, and potential layoffs. For developing nations that rely on affordable energy imports, the risk is not just inflation, but social unrest. This is how an ultimatum issued in Washington can affect your wallet, your job, and your community thousands of miles away. Let us examine the human dimension, because this is where the impact becomes personal in the most direct way. If power plants are struck, millions of Iranian civilians could face blackouts, loss of heating or cooling, disruption of medical services, and contamination of water supplies. Children, the elderly, and the sick are most vulnerable. In hospitals, backup generators can only last so long. In homes, families face uncertainty and fear. For the Iranian people, this is not a geopolitical abstraction. It is a daily struggle for safety, dignity, and survival. At Power Clash Report, we commit to covering the strategy without losing sight of the stakes. We will verify before we amplify, and we will humanize before we politicize. There is also the information warfare dimension. In the digital age, the first narrative to spread often becomes the dominant one, regardless of accuracy. The claim that Trump is panicking or that Iran has ignored the deadline may serve multiple purposes for different actors. For hardliners in Tehran, it could justify severe retaliation and rally domestic support. For partisan media elsewhere, it could fuel anti-American sentiment or, conversely, cheerleading for maximum pressure. For malicious actors, it could be an opportunity to sow discord, manipulate markets, or test information resilience. As consumers of information, our responsibility is to seek verification, consult credible sources, and resist the urge to share unconfirmed reports. This is not about censorship, it is about clarity. We will update this coverage as verified information emerges. Let us consider the regional implications. The Middle East is a complex web of energy interdependence, security partnerships, and geopolitical rivalries. An attack on Iranian power infrastructure could activate multiple fault lines. Gulf Arab states may worry about retaliatory strikes on their own energy facilities. Israel may see an opportunity to degrade Iranian capabilities further. Turkey, Iraq, and other neighbors may seek to avoid being drawn into escalation. The region is a tinderbox. A single spark can ignite a wildfire. What about the global response? Major powers like China and Russia have significant stakes in the narrative of American restraint. Beijing, as a major trade partner with Iran, may seek to mediate or at least avoid taking sides. Moscow, which has its own energy interests and geopolitical rivalry with the West, may seek to exploit the situation to weaken Western unity. European allies who depend on stable energy markets and have invested in diplomatic engagement with Iran may urge caution. The international community would likely call for de-escalation, but without consensus on attribution or response, diplomatic efforts may struggle to gain traction. Now let us address the technical reality of obliterate power plants. Modern electrical grids are complex, interconnected systems. Striking a single facility can cause cascading failures across regions. However, power plants are often hardened, dispersed, and protected by air defenses. An attack capable of causing sustained disruption would require precise intelligence, advanced munitions, and the ability to penetrate defensive perimeters. Moreover, repair and restoration can take weeks or months, prolonging humanitarian harm. This is an often overlooked consequence of attacks on civilian infrastructure, the suffering that lingers long after the headlines fade. So what happens next? There are several possible scenarios. In the most contained, the ultimatum serves its deterrent purpose. Iran eases restrictions on the Strait of Hormuz before the deadline expires. The United States stands down, and back-channel diplomacy prevents further escalation. In a more escalatory scenario, the deadline passes without compliance. The United States conducts limited strikes on designated facilities. Iran retaliates asymmetrically, and the conflict expands into a cycle of action and reaction. In a diplomatic scenario, third-party mediators, perhaps Oman, Qatar, or the UN, intervene at the last moment to broker a face-saving compromise. The outcome depends on intelligence assessments, political calculations, and the fragile mechanisms of crisis communication. What can you do as an informed citizen? First, stay informed through credible sources. Follow official statements from governments, international organizations, and reputable news agencies. Be skeptical of viral claims that lack verification. Second, understand the broader context. This is not an isolated event. It is part of a complex, multi-layered conflict with deep historical roots and global ramifications. Third, engage constructively. Share verified information. Support humanitarian efforts for those affected by violence. Advocate for policies that prioritize diplomacy and civilian protection. At Power Clash Report, we believe that knowledge is power. Understanding geopolitical events helps us make better decisions, protect our families, and contribute to a more stable world. Before we conclude, let us recap the key points. The United States has reportedly issued a 48-hour ultimatum to Iran regarding the Strait of Hormuz, with threats to target Iranian power infrastructure if demands are not met. Iran has not publicly conceded, raising tensions to a critical level. If carried out, strikes on civilian power plants would represent a significant escalation with profound humanitarian, legal, and strategic implications. The claim that Trump is panicking may overstate the immediacy of decision-making, but reflects genuine concerns about escalation dynamics. The human, economic, and security stakes are substantial, affecting civilians, markets, allies, and global stability. The path forward depends on verification, restraint, and responsible communication from all parties. The choice before the world's leaders is stark. They can allow fear and rhetoric to drive policy, risking a spiral of escalation, or they can rely on intelligence, verification, and strategic patience to manage crises without surrendering to panic. History will judge this moment not by the threats issued, but by the wisdom with which they are answered. As citizens of an interconnected world, we have both the right and the responsibility to demand clarity over chaos, evidence over emotion, and truth over virality. If this analysis provided value, please like this video, subscribe to Power Clash Report, and share it with someone who needs to understand these developments. Turn on notifications so you do not miss our updates as this story evolves. In the description below, you will find links to official sources, fact-checking resources, and further reading on this developing situation. We are committed to bringing you signal in a world of noise. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay safe, and remember, in a world of increasing uncertainty, clarity is the most valuable asset we have.